Temasek Holdings Private Limited is an investment company owned by the Government of Singapore. Incorporated in 1974, Temasek owns and manages a net portfolio of 266 billion Singapore dollars, mainly in Singapore and Asia. It is an active shareholder and investor, and its portfolio covers a broad spectrum of sectors including financial services, telecommunications, media and technology, transportation and industrial, life sciences, consumer, real estate, as well as energy and resources. Temasek has a multinational team of over 490 people, in 11 offices globally including London and New York. Temasek is commonly referred to as a sovereign wealth fund, particularly by the press and research outlets based outside Singapore. However, it has frequently disputed this terminology, and prefers to be referred to as an investment company, because it invests mostly in equities, is the outright owner of many assets, and pays taxes like other commercial investment firms. However, its sole shareholder is Singapore's Ministry of Finance. A spokesman for the Ministry of Finance has previously noted that even though there is still no universally accepted definition of sovereign wealth funds, Temasek is required to abide by international guidelines for sovereign wealth funds. Beginning in 2015, capital gains from Temasek are included in Singapore's government budget, contributing approximately 3 billion Singapore dollars to the 2015 budget. Apart from Temasek, the Government of Singapore owns another sovereign wealth fund, GIC Private Limited, which manages an estimated $330 billion and is funded by Singapore's foreign reserves. Temasek is one of a few global firms assigned with the highest overall corporate credit ratings of AAA by Standard & Poor's and AA by Moody's. Temasek has also attained perfect quarterly scores on the Linaberg-Madowell Transparency Index, a measure of the openness of government-owned investment funds. However, the purported difficulty in measuring transparency of sovereign wealth funds should mean that the existence of such an index itself is highly questionable. History Incorporation At the point of Singapore's independence in August 1965, the Government of Singapore had ownership or joint ownership of various local companies, such as Malaysia-Singapore Airlines and the Singapore Telephone Board. As part of its push for local and foreign private investment in sectors such as manufacturing and shipbuilding, the government's Economic Development Board also bought minority stakes in a variety of local companies. During the first 10 years after independence, the government acquired or established several companies, such as the Keppel Corporation, Saint Engineering, and the shipping company Neptune Orient Lines. In 1974, Temasek was incorporated under the Singapore Companies Act to hold and manage the assets previously held directly by the Singapore government. The goal was for Temasek to own and manage these investments on a commercial basis, allowing the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Trade and Industry to focus on policy making. Temasek unregistered trademark S established mission was to contribute to Singapore unregistered trademark S economic development, industrialization, and financial diversification by nurturing effective and commercially driven strategic investments in and around Singapore. Status Temasek is a company incorporated in Singapore, and operates under the provisions of the Singapore Companies Act. It is neither a government agency nor a statutory board. Like any other commercial company, Temasek pays taxes to tax authorities, distributes dividends to its shareholder and has its own board of directors and a professional management team. Its sole shareholder is Singapore's Ministry of Finance. Temasek is designated a fifth schedule entity under the Singapore Constitution, which imposes certain safeguards to protect the government's past reserves. For instance, the approval of the President of Singapore is required for any transaction which is likely to result in a drawdown of Temasek unregistered trademark S cash reserves. The President also has the right to appoint, terminate, or renew the members of Temasek's board of directors. In most other respects, however, Temasek operates as an independent commercial investment holding company. In a 2009 speech, Ho Ching, Temasek's executive director and CEO, said that the company had made an effort to instill discipline and professionalism, and to be tested and measured by providing public markers of performance. she noted that Temasek Euro unregistered trademark S bonds spreads and credit ratings have been regularly and independently monitored as public markers of Temasek Euro unregistered trademark S financial position and credit risks. Temasek had also openly and accurately disclosed its financial information through its annual report. Initial portfolio Temasek Euro unregistered trademark S initial portfolio of 354 million Singapore dollars comprised shares in the following companies, startups and joint ventures previously held by the Singapore government. The companies included a bird park, a hotel, a shoemaker, a detergent producer, naval yards converted into a ship repair business, a startup airline, and an iron and steel mill. The companies in bold below are still within the Temasek portfolio. ACMA Electrical Industries, Cerebo Singapore Pte Limited, Chemical Industries Limited, Development Bank of Singapore Limited, Instant Asia Cultural Shows Pte Limited, Insurance Corporation of Singapore Limited, International Development and Construction Corporation, Intraco Limited, Jurong Bird Park Pte Limited, Jurong Holdings Pte Limited, Jurong Shipbuilders Pte Limited, Jurong Shipyard Pte Limited, Keppel Shipyard Pte Limited, Metrowood Pte Limited, Ming Court Hotel Limited, Mitsubishi Singapore Heavy Industries Pte Limited, National Engineering Services Pte Limited, National Grain Elevator Limited, National Iron and Steel Mills Limited, Neptune Orient Lines, Primary Industries Enterprises Pte Limited, Sembawang Holdings Pte Limited, Singapore Airlines, Singapore Airport Duty Free Emporium Pte Limited, Singapore Cable Car Pte Limited, Singapore General Aviation Service Company Pte Limited, Singapore National Printers Pte Limited, Singapore Offshore Petroleum Services Pte Limited, Singapore Textiles Industries Limited, Singapore Treasury Building Pte Limited, Singapore Zoological Gardens, Singminex Pte Limited, Sugar Industry of Singapore Limited, United Industrial Corporation Limited, United Vegetable Oil Pte Limited. Management Board of Directors Temasek's Board of Directors provides overall guidance and direction in the management of the Compania Euro unregistered trademark S assets and investments. The board comprises 13 members, most of which are non-executive and independent business leaders from the private sector. Lim Boon Heng, Chairman, Deputy Chairman, Singapore Labour Foundation, Chairman, NTUC Enterprise Cooperative Limited, previously Secretary-General, National Trades Union Congress, held several cabinet positions in the Singapore government from 1993 to 2011. Kua Hong Pak, Director, Chairman, Audit Committee, Managing Director and Group CEO of Comfort Del Gro Corporation Limited. Deputy Chairman of SBS Transit Limited and VICOM Limited, conferred the Singapore Public Service Star in 1996. Reappointed as Justice of the Peace in 2010, conferred honorary Shenyang citizenship in 1997. Cheng Kung, Director, Chairman and Managing Director, Wing Tai Holdings Limited, conferred the Distinguished Service Order in 2007. Justice of the Peace since 2000. Bobby Chin YC, Director, Member, Council of Presidential Advisors, Deputy Chairman, NTUC Enterprise Cooperative Limited, Associate Member, the Institute of Chartered Accountants, England and Wales, Fellow Chartered Accountant, Institute of Singapore Chartered Accountants, conferred the Singapore Public Service Star in 2011 and the Singapore Public Service Medal in 2003. Gohu Lin, Director, Managing Director, GK Go Holdings Limited, Chairman, Seatown Holdings Pte Limited, Chairman, Yong Seo To Conservatory of Music and Chairman, Singapore Symphonia Company Limited, Member, Board of Trustees, and Chairman, Investment Committee, National University of Singapore. Ho Ching, Executive Director and CEO, Executive Director since May 2002. CEO since January 2004, former President and CEO of the Singapore Technologies Group, Fellow of the Institution of Engineers, Singapore. Michael Leon J.L., Director, Executive Chairman, Wah Hin and Company Pte Limited, Member, Board of Trustees and Investment Committee, National University of Singapore, Founder, Leap Philanthropy. Robert NGCS, Director, Chairman, Sinolan Company Limited, Vice Chairman, M+SPTE Limited, Director, DBS Bank Limited, Member, 11th/12th National Committee, Chinese Fiopli Euro Unregistered Trademark S Political Consultative Conference. Teo Ming Kian, Director, Chairman, Media Corp Pte Limited, Vertex Venture Holdings Limited, Temasek Life Sciences Laboratory Limited, and the Governing Board of the Earth Observatory of Singapore at the Nanyang Technological University, previously Permanent Secretary in various government ministries and Executive Chairman in key agencies, conferred the Commander First Class a Royal Order of the Polar Star in 1994 and Singapore Meritorious Service Medal in 2008. Marcus Wallenberg, Director, Chairman, Skandinaviska and Skulderbanken, Saab AB, Foundation Asset Management Sweden AB, former Chairman, International Chamber of Commerce and LKAB, Deputy Chairman, LM Ericsson, and former President and CEO, Investor AB. Lucian Wong, Director, Chairman and Senior Partner, Allen and Gladwell LLP, Chairman, Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore, Member, Board of Trustees for the Singapore Business Federation, sits on the boards of several companies including Hap Seng Plantations Holdings Berhad, Singapore Airlines Limited, Singapore Press Holdings Limited, and Singapore Health Services Pte Limited. Robert B. Zolik, Director, Chairman, Goldman Sachs International Advisors, Member, Board of Laureate Education, Incorporated. Senior Fellow, Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs at Harvard University Euro Unregistered Trademark S. Kennedy School of Government, former President and CEO of the World Bank Group, former Deputy Secretary of the U.S. State Department, former U.S. Trade Representative. Peter Ovoser, Director, Chairman, Catalyst, Board of Trustees of St. Gallen Foundation for International Studies, Director, Roche Holdings Limited, former Chief Executive Officer, Royal Dutch Shell plc, former Member, Supervisory Board of Aegon NV, Supervisory Board of UBS AG, Swiss Federal Auditor Oversight Authority, title of Dato Seri Laila Jassa awarded by His Majesty the Sultan of Brunei. Financial highlights. 2015 Performance as at March 31, 2015, Temasek Euro Unregistered Trademark S net portfolio value was 266 billion Singapore dollars, up 43 billion Singapore dollars from last year and with a 55-45 underlying exposure to mature economies and growth regions. Temasek invested 30 billion Singapore dollars and divested a record 19 billion Singapore dollars. Temasek Euro Unregistered Trademark S 1-year total shareholder return was 19.20% in Singapore dollar terms, largely due to the strong performance of Singapore and China portfolios. Longer-term 10-year and 20-year TSRs were 9% and 7% respectively, and TSR since inception in 1974 was 16%. Wealth added, which is Temasek Euro Unregistered Trademark S dollar return above aggregated risk-adjusted hurdle for the year, was 25.5 billion Singapore dollars. Group shareholder equity increased to 219 billion Singapore dollars. Major investments. The top three sectors for investments in 2015 were consumer, financial services, and life sciences and agriculture. During the year, Temasek completed a significant investment in A.S. Watson, and acquired a majority stake in Olam through the completion of a voluntary general offer for the Campania Euro Unregistered Trademark S shares. Temasek continued to expand their financial services portfolio into selected non-banking subsectors. These include insurance and consumer finance, which benefit from transforming economies and growing middle-income populations, as well as other areas like electronic market making and payments, where technology is disrupting traditional players. Investments last year in NN Group, Synchrony Financial, Virtue Financial and Adyen represented some of their investments in those areas. Temasek unregistered trademark S investments in the life sciences and agriculture sectors were primarily focused around global champions. Temasek expanded their portfolio into veterinary pharmaceuticals with the investment in Temasek Copyright Animal, a leading global animal health company. They also increased their stake in Gilead Sciences, a U.S.-based biopharmaceutical company at the cutting edge of developing novel therapies for infectious diseases and cancer. In January, Temasek announced their partnership with the Singapore government to spearhead the rejuvenation of Mandai into an integrated wildlife and nature heritage precinct. This builds on the history and success of the Temasek Nature Portfolio cluster of the Singapore Zoo, Night Safari and the Bird Park. As at March 31, 2015, in terms of geographic exposure by underlying assets, Singapore and China were highest at 28% and 27% respectively. Combined exposure to North America and Europe grew moderately from 14% to 17%. Investments. The top three sectors for investments during the year were consumer, financial services and life sciences and agriculture. In the consumer space, Temasek completed a $5.7 billion investment in A.S. Watson, a leading international health and beauty retailer, with over 11,600 stores operating 13 retail brands in 24 markets worldwide. With this investment, Temasek increased its exposure to the consumer retail sector, with a balanced focus on a growing Asia and a recovering Europe. Temasek expanded their financial services portfolio into non-banking subsectors, such as insurance, consumer finance, electronic market making and payments through investments in NN Group, Prudential plc, Synchrony Financial, Virtue Financial and Adyen. They also increased holdings in Industrial and Commercial Bank of China. In life sciences and agriculture, Temasek increased their stake by about $800 million in Gilead Sciences, a U.S.-based biopharmaceutical company, which specializes in developing novel therapies for infectious diseases and cancer. Temasek also invested in Temasek Copyright Animal, a global animal health company, and COFCO International Limited, which holds a controlling stake in Nidera and Noble Agri, two international agriculture supply chain managers. In terms of geography, Asia accounted for about 42% of Temasek unregistered trademark S portfolio during the year, followed by North America and Europe with a combined 43% share of their new investments. In Asia, apart from the consumer investments in A.S. Watson and Olam, Temasek invested actively in the telecommunications, media and technology sector. New investments included Tencent, one of the top internet companies in China; Lazada, a leading Southeast Asia e-commerce platform; and ID, a prominent Chinese transportation network company. Temasek increased their exposure in India with investments in Global Health, the owner of the Medanta franchise of multi-speciality, tertiary care hospitals, and in Intas Pharmaceuticals, a global generics company engaged in the development, manufacturing and marketing of pharmaceuticals formulations. They were also active in the technology sector in India with investments in Snapdeal, a leading e-commerce platform; Mingvan, a data analytics company focused on the retail sector; and Cognizant Technology Solutions, a U.S.-listed IT and business process outsourcing service provider with the majority of its operations in India. In Europe, Temasek made several investments in the UK real estate sector which included a combination of office and mixed-use development assets, such as Mid-City Place and 22 Bishopsgate. Elsewhere in Europe, they invested in Deutsche Post DHL, an international logistics player; Origo Exploration, a North Sea oil exploration company; and Gas Transport and Technigas, a global provider for liquefied natural gas transport and storage. Exposure to European financials also increased, as a play on European recovery, with investments in NN Group and Lloyds Banking Group. In North America, apart from the life sciences and agriculture and financial services sectors, they also made investments in the technology and energy subsectors. These included Internet Brands, a leader in software, marketplace and online media assets; Cheniere Energy, an energy company engaged in LNG-related businesses. And a follow-on investment in Veneri Resources, an upstream oil and gas exploration company focused on deep-water Gulf of Mexico. Key divestments included part of Temasek Euro unregistered trademark S stakes in China Construction Bank and Alibaba, where they continue to hold substantial positions. They also exited their shareholdings in Mosaic, Qualcomm, Kunlun Energy and Midriak. Temasek's major investments include financial services, AIA Group Limited, Bank of China Limited, China Construction Bank Corporation, DBS Group Holdings Limited, Industrial and Commercial Bank of China Limited, Lloyds Banking Group plc, Ping An Insurance Company of China, Limited, Prudential plc Point Danaman Indonesia, TBK. Standard Chartered plc, Alliance Bank Berhad. Telecommunications, Media and Technology, Singapore Technologies Telemedia Pte Limited, Stats Chip Pack Limited, Bharti Airtel Limited, Medaya Corp Pte Limited, Singtel, InTouch Holdings Public Company Limited, Market Limited, Alibaba Group Holding Limited, Yandex. Transportations and Industrials, Evonik Industries AG, Keppel Corporation Limited, Neptune Orient Lines Limited, PSA International Pte Limited, Sembcorp Industries Limited, Singapore Technologies Engineering Limited, Shinar Mas Group, Singapore Airlines Limited, Singapore Power Limited, SMRT Corporation Limited. Consumer and Real Estate, Olam International Limited, AS Watson Holdings Limited, Capitaland Limited, M Plus SPTE Limited. Prillo Indo Ventures SDNBHD, Mapletree Investments Pte Limited, SATS Limited. Wildlife Reserves Singapore Pte Limited. Energy and Resources, FTS International, Incorporated. MEG Energy Corporation, BG Group plc, Repsol, SA, Turquoise Hill Resources Limited. Life Sciences and Agriculture, Celltrion, Incorporated. Gilead Sciences, Incorporated. Thermo Fisher Scientific Incorporated. 2015 Performance. 2014 Performance. 2013 Performance. 2012 Performance. 2011 Performance. 2010 Performance. Timeline of investments, based on publicly available information, Temasek Euro unregistered trademark S investment and divestment activities include, but are not limited to the following. 2015 In February 2015, it was reported that Temasek sold 7.3 million shares in Alibaba Group Holding in the fourth quarter as the Chinese internet firm Euro unregistered trademark S shares rallied following its initial public offering in September. Also in February 2015, industrial landlord JTC Corporation and Singapore investment company Temasek officially sealed their agreement to merge 4 of their subsidiaries into a single platform. This powerful new platform, worth $5 billion, will become one of the region's largest integrated urban solutions providers. In March 2015, Temasek joined Hotel Properties Limited and 3 other partners to buy 2 prime central London properties for £308 million for a residential and office tower development as Asian investors snap up overseas real estate. In April 2015, it was announced that Temasek will invest 9.45 billion rupees in Glenmark Pharmaceuticals Limited through its wholly owned subsidiary Aranda Investments. In June 2015, it was reported that European private equity fund CVC and Singaporean sovereign wealth fund Temasek to buy a controlling stake in the pharmaceutical firm Alvogen. The transaction is the latest sign of the hectic pace of deal-making in the healthcare sector, which has seen more than $250 billion of mergers and acquisitions so far this year, up nearly 2/3 from a year ago. In June 2015, it was reported that Temasek is investing $40 million in Hello, a 3-year-old company founded by James Proud. In July 2015, it was reported that Facebook co-founder and Temasek were main investors in new venture capital fund, Golden Gate Ventures Fund 2 LP. Golden Gate Ventures is said to take stakes in technology companies in Southeast Asia. In October 2015, It was announced that the company has committed, as an investment partner, to the Dell acquisition offer for Inc. Corporation. 2014 In February 2014, it was reported that Temasek was seeking to sell its $3.1 billion stake in the Thailand-based telecoms firm Shin Corporation and that it has approached Singtel as a potential buyer. Temasek and Singtel declined comment, noting that it was not their policy to respond to market speculation. In March 2014, Ophir Energy reported that Temasek subsidiary Pavilion Energy had acquired a 20% interest in a joint venture to exploit Blocks 1, 3 and 4 offshore Tanzania, for the development of LNG resources for a total consideration of $1.293 billion. In April 2014, Temasek made a $5.7 billion investment for a 24.95% stake in A.S. Watson, a global health and beauty retailer with over 11,600 retail outlets in Asia and Europe. Temasek also made an investment of a $425 million to NN Group, a Dutch insurance company. In May 2014, Temasek raised its stake in Olam, a global supply chain manager and processor of agricultural products and food ingredients, to 58.5% through Temasek, a Euro-1 registered trademark S wholly owned subsidiary, Breedon's Investments. 2013 In February 2013, Temasek invested $300 million for a 26.1% stake of PT Matahari Putra Prima, a subsidiary of the PT Multipolar Holding Company, through its indirect wholly owned subsidiary, Anderson Investments. Temasek also increased its stake in Olam to 23%. In March 2013, Temasek bought a 5.04% stake in Repsol SA, making this Singaporean Euro-1 registered trademark S largest investment in Spain. During the same period, Temasek invested in Tiger Airways, a budget carrier headquartered in Singapore, in Healthcare Global Enterprises, HCG, a Bangalore-based cancer care provider, and in Evonik Industries AG, a German specialty chemicals company. In April 2013, Temasek established Pavilion Energy Pte Limited to invest in clean energy, especially around the LNG supply chain. In May 2013, Temasek increased its stake in the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China and invested in Market, a leading global financial information services company. In June 2013, Temasek invested in Fanatics, Incorporated, a U.S. sports apparel online retailer, and in Celltrion, a South Korean biotechnology firm. In July 2013, Temasek and Goldman Sachs jointly invested $110 million through private placements in Chinese online literature platform Cloudery. Temasek also raised its shares in CITIC Securities Company, China's largest listed brokerage firm, from 8.95% to 9.01%. 2012 In January 2012, Temasek invested 6.85 billion rupees in Godrej Consumer Products. In April 2012, Temasek raised its stake in the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China Limited by purchasing $2.3 billion of its Hong Kong-listed shares from Goldman Sachs Group Incorporated and purchased almost half of the shares offered by Kunlun Energy for $1.34 billion. In May 2012, Temasek, along with Warburg Pincus, Kelso and Company, and the Jordan Company, made an investment of up to $1.125 billion in Veneri Resources, an early-stage company focused on deep-water oil exploration in the Gulf of Mexico. Temasek also made a 160 million Singapore dollars investment in the eighth-largest bank in Mexico, Banco del Bajío, and jointly invested $468 million with Arud J Capital and Houston-based liquefied natural gas firm Cheniere Energy Incorporated. In August 2012, Temasek sold its 1.4% stake in Tiger beer maker Asia Pacific Breweries to Heineken. In September 2012, Temasek sold a 2.5% stake in Singtel, bringing its shares down to 51.9%. In November 2012, Temasek raised its stake in Rio Tinto Group, a Euro-1 registered trademark S Turquoise Hill Resources Limited unit of 3.7% and set up Clifford Capital, a specialist finance company, along with a consortium of shareholders including DBS, Standard Chartered, Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation, Manulife, and Prudential. In November 2012, Temasek also increased its 8-share stake in China Construction Bank to 9.4%. In December 2012, Temasek bought a stake in a Turkish government-owned bank, Tokayhawk Bankası, and entered into a definitive agreement with Godrej Agrovet, a subsidiary of Godrej Industries, to acquire a 19.99% stake in the company for Rs 572 crore. Temasek also raised its stake in commodity trader Olam International to 19%. 2011 In January 2011, Temasek acquired a total of 65.126 million new shares in Asian Citrus Holdings Limited, one of the largest Chinese orange growers and tropical fruit juice suppliers. In February 2011, Temasek invested more than 200 million Singapore dollars in Asia Capital, a Pan-Asia reinsurer. In March 2011, Temasek invested over 100 million Singapore dollars in the first container port business trust listed on the Singapore Exchange, Hutchison Port Holdings Trust. In May 2011, Temasek, Pfizer, Gulco Group, and the Bank of China Group Investment bought a total of $550 million shares in Shanghai Pharmaceuticals Holding Company. Temasek also partnered with Arujay Capital and anchored a consortium that purchased a 70% stake in Fractech, a U.S.-based company providing well stimulation services. In June 2011, Temasek partnered with Khazanah Nasional Berhad to form a 40-60 joint venture, M+SPTE Limited, to develop landmark projects in Singapore. Unregistered trademark S Marina South and Ophir Rocker. Temasek also invested $55 million in Oang and Jia Li, a resources and real estate conglomerate with operations in Indochina. In September 2011, Temasek invested 50 million Singapore dollars in Alibaba Group, China's largest e-commerce website, and bought 4.4 billion shares in China Construction Bank Corporation, raising its stake to 8.10%. 2010 In February 2010, Temasek injected 210 million Singapore dollars into Surbana to support their growth plans and took up a 4% stake in Soba Developers, a developer in South India. In March 2010, Temasek invested nearly $50 million in Amiri Biotechnologies Incorporated, the U.S. parent of Amiri Brazil, a Brazilian company which produces biofuels and other chemicals from sugarcane. Temasek also invested 200 million Singapore dollars in Platmin, a Canadian-listed platinum producer with assets in South Africa. In April 2010, Temasek invested 687 million Singapore dollars in Enmet Mining, a Canadian copper producer with operations in 6 countries, and invested $257.4 million for a 10% stake in Celltrion, a Korean biopharmaceutical company developing biosimilars for both emerging and developed markets. Temasek unregistered trademark S investment in GMR Energy also gave Temasek 280 million Singapore dollars exposure to India unregistered trademark S growing power sector. In May 2010, Temasek invested 240 million Singapore dollars in India unregistered trademark S Premier Multi-Asset Class Exchange, the National Stock Exchange of India. Temasek also invested 700 million Singapore dollars in Chesapeake Energy Corporation, the second largest producer of natural gas in the USA. In July 2010, Temasek partnered with Impulsora Mexicana de Desarrollos Inmobiliarios in Mexico and committed over 100 million Singapore dollars to pursue land banking opportunities through the joint investment Supraterra. In August 2010, Temasek invested 50 million Singapore dollars in Tudor, a Chinese online video site. In October 2010, Temasek purchased a 14% stake in Odebrecht Oil and Gas, an upstream services provider for the oil industry, for $400 million. In December 2010, Temasek invested in New China Life, a Beijing-based insurer. 2009 In January 2009, Temasek sold its close to 2% stake in British bank Barclays. In February 2009, Temasek offered new shares via the $335 million rights issue by the Indonesian bank Danamon. In March 2009, Temasek sold its 3.8% stake in Bank of America Corporation and all of its 3.26% stake in China Euro-unregistered trademark S Minsheng Bank. In June 2009, Temasek reinvested 438 million Singapore dollars in Singapore-based Olam International for a 13.8% stake. Temasek also supported the planned 1.4 billion Singapore dollars rights issue by Neptune Orient Lines. In September 2009, Temasek took up its full pro rata 27.77% of the 235.2 million Singapore dollars rights issue by City Spring Infrastructure Trust and sold its stake in Chartered Semiconductor Manufacturing Limited, a maker of customized semiconductors. In October 2009, Temasek invested $50 million in Longfor Properties Company Limited, a real estate developer in Hong Kong, and invested 21 million Singapore dollars in Lien Fung Trinity Limited, a luxury menswear retailer in Hong Kong. In November 2009, Temasek invested 418 million Singapore dollars in the convertible debentures of Nico Resources, a Canadian-listed oil and gas company with assets in Asia, and invested 343 million Singapore dollars for a 12% stake in Seoul Semiconductor, a Korean light-emitting diode company. 2008 In January 2008, Temasek bought 14.5 million shares to raise its stake in Standard Chartered Bank to 19%. In February 2008, Temasek lifted its stake in Australia Euro-unregistered trademark S childcare provider, ABC Learning Centres, from 12.35% to 14.66%. In March 2008, Temasek sold 55.7% of its Bank Internasional Indonesia stake to Maybank for $1.5 billion and sold Tuas Power Limited to power producer China Hunan Group for 4.24 billion Singapore dollars. In April 2008, Temasek invested 150 million Singapore dollars in Lungming, an independent iron ore company that owns and operates the Erogol iron ore mine in Mongolia. In August 2008, Temasek sold its 60% stake in Singapore Computer Systems for 140 million Singapore dollars to Singapore Telecommunications. In September 2008, Temasek sold Sinoko Power to Marubeni-led Lion Power Consortium for 3.65 billion Singapore dollars. In December 2008, Temasek sold its 69.68% stake in Singapore Food Industries Limited for 334.5 million Singapore dollars to Singapore Airport Terminal Services Limited. In December 2008, Temasek sold Power Sirah to YTL Power International for an enterprise value of 3.8 billion Singapore dollars. 2007 In February 2007, Temasek set up and listed the City Spring Infrastructure Trust, a yield-oriented vehicle for infrastructure investments in Asia, and took advantage of the increasing depth of the debt market to introduce different risk-related securities through Astria, a special-purpose vehicle holding a portfolio of investments in private equity funds. In May 2007, Temasek raised its stake in Stats Chippak from 35% to 83% following a voluntary cash tender offer for the company in March 2007, thus providing greater exposure to the semiconductor sector. Temasek also completed its investment in child care services with a 12% stake in ABC Learning Centres, which operates childcare centres in Australia, New Zealand, the UK, and USA, and invested in MEG Energy, one of the largest Canadian oil sands developers. In June 2007, Temasek invested in Russia at the initial public offering of the PIK Group, an important residential real estate developer, and took a 10% stake in MinPhu Seafood Joint Stock Company, a shrimp processor and exporter in Vietnam with exports to US, Japan, Canada, EU, and Australia. Temasek also expanded its platform in NIB Bank of Pakistan through the acquisition of the Pakistan Industrial Credit and Investment Corporation Limited. In August 2007, Temasek invested in the Pacific Road Resources Fund, an Australia-based specialized resources fund focused on investing in mining projects in Asia-Pacific, South America and OECD economies. Temasek also invested in Indochina Capital, a Euro-unregistered trademark S Vietnam dedicated real estate funds to acquire and develop office, retail, residential, and hotel as well as resort properties. In China, Temasek invested over 1.6 billion Singapore dollars to back emerging champions such as Country Garden, a property developer, Xingyu Hemdali, a luxury watch retail chain, and Yingli Green Energy, a solar equipment producer. Temasek also invested in Lian Holdings Limited, a provider of low-cost platform for mobile micropayments, and in Great Wall Airlines, a three-way joint venture between Beijing Aerospace Satellite Applications Corporation, Singapore Airlines, and Temasek. In India, Temasek a Euro unregistered trademark S investments in emerging champions such as ICICI Bank and BPO company First Solutions complemented newer investment commitments in Tata Sky, a provider of direct-to-home digital satellite TV services, and INX Media, a new television broadcaster. Temasek also made a commitment to invest in GVK Power and Infrastructure Limited, both infrastructure development companies. 2006 In January 2006, Temasek joined a consortium of Thai investors to invest in Shin Corporation and co-invested with Istithmar PJSC of Dubai in Thailand's healthcare sector, each taking about 6% in Bumrungrad Hospital, one of the largest hospitals in Southeast Asia. In March 2006, Temasek placed out 770 million Singtel ordinary shares worth over 2 billion Singapore dollars and completed its purchase of an 11.5% stake in Standard Chartered from the Tan Sri Kut Tekpat estate. Temasek also participated in the restructuring of China Aviation Oil with a minority co-investment stake alongside oil major BP and invested in Tata Teleservices, one of India's telecom service providers. In March 2006, Temasek also invested some $400 million in the E-Sun Financial Holding Company, the holding company of Taiwan's E-Sun Commercial Bank, and acquired a 9.95% stake in iLogistics, a Japanese logistics firm with core capabilities in international and multimodal distribution services. In April 2006, Temasek made a follow-on investment in ICICI OneSource, one of India's leading BPO providers, and expanded its exposure to infrastructure in India by partnering Reliance Energy for a 50% stake in the $200 million Reliance India Power Fund. Temasek also made a minority investment in Aptuit, a contract research company providing preclinical development services and clinical trial materials. In May 2006, Temasek invested $106 million in E-Mobile, a Japanese wireless services provider, and completed its investment in Numea Tekva, a global producer of precision automotive parts. In August 2006, Temasek acquired 30% of PT Chandra Asri, an Indonesian producer of ethylene, a key feedstock for petrochemical products. In October 2006, Temasek invested in Intercell AG of Austria and Vical Incorporated of USA, both of which have platform technologies for the development of vaccines. In December 2006, Temasek made a substantial investment in food and beverage with a 15% stake in Fraser & Eve, a Singapore-based food and beverage enterprise with significant reach in the region. Temasek also took a 9% stake in the first Vietnam-focused infrastructure fund, Vietnam Infrastructure Limited, a closed-end AIM-listed fund managed by Vina Capital. 2005 In January 2005, Asia Financial Holdings, a wholly owned subsidiary of Temasek, acquired a 5% stake in China Minsheng Banking Corporation, China Euro unregistered trademark S first privately owned bank. In March 2005, Temasek Saranda Investments acquired 5.5 million shares in Mahindra & Mahindra, a utility vehicle and tractor manufacturer in India. Temasek Euro unregistered trademark SAFH also completed its first investment in Malaysia Euro unregistered trademark S banking sector, partnering Langkah Bahagia to jointly purchase a 30% stake in Malaysian Plantations, the 100% shareholder of Alliance Bank Berhad. Also in March 2005, AFH made its first direct investment in Pakistan, with a 25% stake in the listed NDLC IFIC Bank. In April 2005, Temasek joined a $100 million consortium led by Rolls-Royce to develop high-temperature solid oxide fuel cells for 1 to 2 megawatt power systems. In May 2005, Temasek took a 24% stake in Great Wall Airline Company, a cargo airline venture with SIA Cargo and China Great Wall Industry Corporation. In June 2005, Temasek invested $7.5 million in Apollo HealthStreet, a medical business process outsourcing and IT services company that specializes in servicing U.S.-based clients, and partnered Zermelig and Quintiles to form a pharmaceutical sales and commercialization joint venture, Asia Pacific Pharmaceutical Holdings. In July 2005, AFH increased its stake in NIB to 73% through a general offer to minority shareholders and signed a definitive agreement with the China Construction Bank to invest $1 billion in its upcoming initial public offering. In August 2005, AFH purchased a 5.1% stake in CCB from the majority owner, China Safe Investments Limited, and announced its agreement to acquire a 10% interest in Bank of China. Temasek also invested $1.5 billion for a 5% stake in China Construction Bank and acquired an 8.3% stake in Hobson Development Holdings, a developer of residential properties. In September 2005, Temasek took a 50% stake in Sing Spring Pte Limited, a desalination facility in Singapore, and took a 5% in Kinh a Vietnamese confectionery maker with a 50% market share who also distributes its products into Cambodia. In October 2005, Temasek acquired 25% of Medriac, a pharmaceutical firm which provides drug formulation and manufacturing services for a wide range of generic products to global pharmaceutical companies. Temasek also co-invested with J.W. Childs, an American private equity firm, in an investment consortium led by Osim to acquire Brookstone, a specialty retailer across the USA. In November 2005, Temasek co-invested with Cargill in oil palm plantations in Indonesia and Papua New Guinea through a joint venture company, CTP Holdings, and committed $10 million in a venture capital fund, GSA Ventures, to fund wireless, internet, new media, semiconductor, and other technology-rich companies in China. In December 2005, Temasek partnered Troika Dialogue Asset Management with an initial total commitment of $150 million to establish the Russian New Growth Fund LP to seek out investments in Russia and in countries of the former Soviet Union. Temasek also participated as a cornerstone investor in the initial public offering of China's Dongfeng Motor Group. Also in December 2005, Temasek co-invested with Silver Lake Partners and KKR, two American private equity firms, in the $2.7 billion carve-out of the semiconductor products group of Agilent Technologies to form Avago Technologies, which manufactures analog and optoelectronic components. Temasek also invested $1.5 billion for a 5% stake in Bank of China. 2004 Temasek made its maiden investment in Russia, with a 3% stake in London-listed company Mobile Telesystems. Temasek also acquired a number of small pre-IPO and IPO stakes in various emerging players, particularly in the online and technology space such as Soma Networks, a US-based provider of wireless broadband equipment, and Harbor Networks, a Chinese manufacturer of Internet Protocol-based next-generation network equipment. In March 2004, Temasek made its first major direct investment in Malaysia with a 5% stake in Telekom Malaysia, the counter-Euro-unregistered trademark S-pioneer telecommunications provider, and made its first investment in airports in the Airport Authority of Thailand. In April 2004, Temasek took a 19% stake in Jetstar Asia Airways, a Singapore-based low-cost carrier in partnership with Australia Euro-unregistered trademark Qantas Airways and two other Singapore investors. In August 2004, Temasek increased its stake in NOL to above 30%, triggering a mandatory general offer under the Singapore Code on Takeovers and Mergers. At the close of the offer on September 29, 2004, Temasek Euro-unregistered trademark S stake in NOL was above 68%. At the end of September 2004, Temasek increased its stake in NOL from approximately 29% to over 67% through a mandatory general offer. St. Telemedia, a private investment holding company part of Temasek Holdings, acquired a 62% stake in U.S. submarine cable operator Global Crossing and a 33% stake in India Euro-unregistered trademark Idea Cellular jointly with Telecom Malaysia, and became a significant shareholder in U.S.-listed Equinix. In the power, energy, and natural resources fields, Temasek invested in companies such as eFlux and Olam International, as part of this theme. In September 2003, Temasek invested $90 million for a 16% stake in Quintiles, a provider of clinical trial and commercialization services to the pharmaceutical and biotechnology industries. Temasek also acquired a 14% stake in Matrix Laboratories of India and an 8% stake in Apollo Hospital Enterprise Limited, a fully integrated private healthcare services provider in India. In the IT sector, Temasek acquired a minority stake in ICICI OneSource, a business process outsourcing company focused on the financial sector, and made an investment in Tata Consultancy Services, an IT services company. Temasek acquired a 3% stake in China Power International at its IPO at the end of 2004. 2003 In June 2003, Temasek Eastasia Financial Pte Limited as proxy acquired 51% of Bank Danamon shares from Indonesian Bank Restructuring Agency, IBRA. During 2003 IBRA sold another 10.88% to AFI. Governance framework. Temasek Charter As an institution, Temasek is guided by the Temasek Charter, a set of principles that guides the Compania Euro-unregistered trademark S actions. The Charter has three main principles. 1. Temasek is an active investor and shareholder. 2. Temasek is a forward-looking institution. 3. Temasek is a trusted steward. According to the first principle, Temasek owns and manages its assets and makes investment and divestment decisions based on commercial principles with the aim of delivering sustainable value over the long term. According to the second principle, Temasek is a forward-looking institution with a long-term perspective. Through its merit values, Temasek aims to foster an ownership culture which aligns employee and shareholder interests. According to the third principle, Temasek acts as a responsible corporate citizen that safeguards its past reserves and engages people and communities based on the principles of sustainability and good governance. Rights and obligations. As an investment company incorporated under the Singapore Companies Act, Temasek owns and manages its assets. This means that it can make business decisions relating to its portfolio with full commercial discretion under the guidance of its board, such as increasing, holding, or decreasing its investment holdings to achieve maximum risk-adjusted returns over the long term. Under the Singapore Constitution, Temasek is one of the key Singapore entities with constitutional safeguards to protect its past reserves. Key companies designated under the Singapore Constitution include the Government of Singapore Investment Corporation Pte Limited, which manages the reserves of the Singapore government. Other designated entities with constitutional safeguards for their respective past reserves under the Singapore Constitution are statutory boards such as the Central Provident Fund Board and the Monetary Authority of Singapore. Owner and shareholder, guided by business tenets, Temasek operates with full flexibility without the involvement of its shareholders, Singaporean Euro-unregistered trademark S Ministry of Finance and the President of Singapore. Temasek is wholly owned by the Minister for Finance, who under the Singapore Minister for Finance Act is a body corporate. As such, Temasek provides annual statutory financial statements audited by an international audit firm, as well as periodic updates to its shareholder. Temasek is a Singapore-exempt private company exempted from disclosing any financial information publicly, but chooses to publish its group financial summary and portfolio performance in its annual report, the Temasek Review. Temasek also declares dividends annually, once they are deliberated and recommended by its board for its shareholder a Euro-unregistered trademark S consideration at the annual general meeting. Temasek contributes to the Singapore government budget via the dividends it pays to its shareholder and the tax on its profits. the shareholder a unregistered trademark S right to appoint, reappoint, or remove board members is subject to the President a unregistered trademark S approval, a measure put in place to safeguard the integrity of the board and to protect the company a unregistered trademark S past reserves. The appointment or removal of the CEO by the board is also subject to the concurrence of the President. Further to its normal fiduciary duties to the company, the board is also accountable to the President to ensure that every disposal of investment is transacted at fair market value. Protection of Temasek unregistered trademark S past reserves. According to the Singapore Constitution, Temasek unregistered trademark S past reserves are those accumulated before the current term of government, while its current reserves are those accumulated during the current term of government. This means that on the eve of the first day of each term of government, Temasek unregistered trademark S total reserves comprising past reserves and current reserves as at the changeover are locked up as past reserves for the next term of government. This cycle repeats every time there is a change in the term of government. The President of the Republic of Singapore has an independent custodial role to safeguard Singapore unregistered trademark S critical assets and past reserves. As a key institution under the Singapore Constitution, Temasek is therefore required to seek the President unregistered trademark S approval before a draw occurs on Temasek unregistered trademark S past reserves. Temasek unregistered trademark S chairman and CEO also certify the company unregistered trademark S statement of reserves and statement of past reserves to the President at prescribed intervals, as part of their responsibility to protect its past reserves. Portfolio companies. Temasek is an active investor and rebalances its portfolio from time to time. Decisions to invest, divest, or hold portfolio companies are based on Temasek unregistered trademark S intrinsic value test. Temasek unregistered trademark S portfolio companies are guided and managed by their respective boards and management, which means Temasek does not direct their business decisions or operations. As board directors have a fiduciary duty to safeguard the interests of their respective companies, Temasek advocates that boards be independent of management in order to provide effective oversight and supervision of management. This includes having mostly non-executive members on boards with the strength and experience to oversee management. Temasek also advocates that the chairman and CEO roles be held by separate persons, independent of each other, to ensure a balance of power for independent decision-making, and a greater capacity for management supervision by the board. Temasek protects its interests by exercising its shareholder rights, including voting at shareholders unregistered trademark meetings when needed. Temasek Board and Committees. Temasek unregistered trademark S Board provides overall guidance and policy directions to its management. As at August 31, 2013, the board comprises 10 members, the majority of whom are non-executive independent private sector business leaders. The board meets for 2-day meetings each quarter, and may meet more often when necessary. 9 board meetings were held during the year ended March 31, 2013. The board decides on the following matters: overall long-term strategic objectives, annual budget, annual audited statutory accounts, major investment and divestment proposals, major funding proposals, CEO appointment and succession planning, board changes. To assist the board in its responsibilities, specific authority is delegated to various board committees chaired by a non-executive director who is independent of management. Executive Committee. The ExCo has the authority to approve new investment and divestment decisions up to a defined threshold beyond which transactions are considered by the board. The minutes of ExCo meetings are circulated to the board. Audit Committee. The AC reviews, among other things, Temasek unregistered trademark S system of internal controls and the processes used for financial reporting, audit, and monitoring compliance with laws and regulations. The AC also reviews the scope and results of the external audit, as well as the independence of external auditors. The AC is supported by internal audit, which reports functionally to the AC and administratively to the Office of the CEO to ensure its independence. IA has full and unrestricted access to all records, properties, and personnel to effectively perform its functions. Leadership Development and Compensation Committee. The LDCC is responsible for recommending board and management leadership plans to the Temasek board, including board and CEO succession, guidelines and policies on performance measurement, and compensation plans. Decisions at board and committee meetings are based on a simple majority of votes, including those via telephone or video conference. In the case of a tied vote, the chairman has a second or casting vote. Where a board resolution is obtained via circulation, the resolution becomes effective upon approval by at least two-thirds of the board. Board members with interests that may conflict with specific Temasek interests are recused from the relevant information flow, deliberations, and decisions. Quarterly board meetings include executive sessions for the non-executive directors to meet without the presence of management. The annual CEO succession review is included in these deliberations. Risk management. Temasek tracks and manages the risks associated with long-term market and economic cycles by designating risk owners who take full ownership of risk outcomes. This process allows day-to-day risk decisions to be taken by management, while major risk decisions, including major investments and divestments, are taken by the board. Temasek Euro unregistered trademark S risk management framework covers three categories of risks: strategic, performance, and operational. Strategic risk, reputation, aggregate risk profile, political, structural foreign exchange, funding and liquidity, performance risk, macroeconomic, geography, industry, markets, tax, operational risk, people, legal and regulatory, systems and processes, counterparty, business disruption. Investment themes. Temasek Euro unregistered trademark S portfolio companies are independent of Temasek Euro. They are thus guided and managed by their respective boards and management. Temasek's investment strategy is guided by four key investment themes: transforming economies, tapping the potential of transforming economies such as China, India, Southeast Asia, and Latin America through investments in sectors such as financial services, infrastructure, and logistics. Growing middle-income populations, leveraging growing consumer demands through investments in sectors such as telecommunications, media and technology, and consumer and real estate. Deepening comparative advantages, seeking out economies, businesses and companies with distinctive intellectual property and other competitive advantages. Emerging champions. Investing in companies with a strong home base as well as companies at inflection points, with the potential to be regional or global champions. Community engagement. Since its inception, Temasek has committed over 1.5 billion Singapore dollars to community and philanthropic activities in Singapore and beyond. Temasek Chairman Lim Boon Heng said that the underlying principle is to support organizations to build capability and Euro programs that help people to help themselves, become self-Euro-reliant and lead better lives. He added that Temasek prefers not to give only Euro off donations. Instead, it supports worthy programs continuously, which is why it establishes endowments to serve this purpose. Since 2003, Temasek has contributed a portion of its annual returns to its communities, focusing on building people, building communities, building capabilities, and rebuilding lives. Temasek Trust, established in 2007, with an initial endowment of 500 million Singapore dollars, Temasek Trust is a philanthropic arm of Temasek, overseeing the management and disbursement of Temasek Euro unregistered trademark S endowments and gifts, earmarked for specific non-profit philanthropic organizations. Temasek Trust receives donations for each year of Temasek's positive revenue which may be added to the endowment in Temasek Trust or be designated for specific uses. The Trust reinvests the endowment gifts from Temasek, and serves as a growing stakeholder for Temasek. It is also responsible for the disciplined disbursement of the endowments on a sustainable basis to the various NPPOs sanctioned by Temasek. The Trust has its own board of trustees to manage endowments and donations separately from the NPPOs that develop and deliver community programs. The board of trustees consists of Mr. S. Nabalan, Chairman, and Mr. Ratan Tata, Member. Led by Ms. Jacqueline Wong, CEO. beneficiary NPPOs are independently responsible to their boards for the development and delivery of the community programs within their respective mandates. Temasek has seeded or adopted the following NPPOs. Singapore Technologies Endowment Programme. STEP was created in 1997 to commemorate Temasek Euro unregistered trademark's 30th anniversary and to provide opportunities for Asian youth to connect with others in and around Asia. Its programs enable the youth to engage with the less fortunate, learn specific areas on science, connect with and have a better understanding and appreciation of the cultures and aspirations of youths from other countries in Asia. Since 1997, almost 2,000 teenage students from various countries, including almost 600 junior college and polytechnic students from Singapore, have participated in the Sunburst Youth Camp. Singapore Millennium Foundation, SMF, was founded in 2011 to promote and advance scientific progress in Singapore. It funds research programs relevant for Singapore, including programs for mental health, Parkinson's disease, neuromuscular disease, liver and lung cancer, biofuel, aging, palliative care, special needs education and non-medical bioscience. Temasek Education Foundation, TEF, was set up in 2011 to support education opportunities in Singapore through the nurturing and supporting of young talents in the areas of sports, mathematics, science, arts, and music. TEF has endowments totaling 150 million Singapore dollars, including 335 million Singapore dollars endowments named after Singapore Euro unregistered trademark's pioneering leaders, E. W. Barker, Taeng Soon, and David Marshall. Temasek Life Sciences Laboratory, established in 2002, TLL brings together 240 researchers from 21 different nationalities to undertake biomolecular science research and applications to benefit people in Asia and beyond. It focuses primarily on understanding the cellular mechanisms that underlie the development and physiology of plants, fungi, and animals, and also has affiliations with the National University of Singapore and Nanyang Technological University. Temasek Cares was established in 2009 to commemorate the 35th anniversary of Temasek. Backed by two endowments of 100 million Singapore dollars, 70 million Singapore dollars, and another 40 million Singapore dollars in March 2014, Temasek Cares aims to improve the lives of underprivileged individuals, families, and communities in Singapore. It has since aided nearly 13,000 individuals in Singapore over the last 4 years. One example is the KK Women's and Children's Hospital Euro unregistered trademark's Impact Program, which helps children with diverse or difficult needs. Since 2011, the program has assisted 1,500 children as well as trained 184 individuals to become facilitators. The newest endowment fund of 40 million Singapore dollars was announced by Lim in March 2014 to commemorate Temasek Euro unregistered trademark's 40th anniversary. Called the Temasek Emergency Preparedness Fund, it will support programs that help people in crises or emergencies, including environmental disasters like haze, severe accidents, or trauma. Temasek Foundation, working with expert institutions from Singapore and the region, TF supports training programs in healthcare, education, public administration, and disaster preparedness, as well as programs that promote positive networks of cooperation in and across communities in Asia. Since May 2007, it has committed almost 114 million Singapore dollars in support of 178 programs in 19 countries in Asia. S. Rajaratnam Endowment, the 100 million Singapore dollars SRE was set up with the objective to achieve development, peace and stability in the region by deepening international friendships, promoting regional cooperation, and fostering a greater and common understanding of international rules, based on the twin pillars of good governance and sustainability. Honorable Sui Senator Endowment. The 35 million Singapore dollars Honorable Sui Senator Endowment focuses on talent development in the Asian financial sector through the Temasek Regional Regulators Scholarship Program at the Wealth Management Institute. T-Touch is a volunteer initiative driven by Temasek employees to support various communities in and around Singapore. It is supported and supplemented by company-side programs and initiatives, including the Temasek Community Day, which falls on the anniversary of the Campania Euro unregistered trademark S incorporation. Donations by Temasek Euro unregistered trademark S employees for community causes are matched by the company. Some of the beneficiaries of T2SHA Euro unregistered trademark S initiatives include the elderly, the disadvantaged, ex-offenders, and children with special needs. T-Touch also engages the wider communities outside of Singapore through international activities in Asia and Latin America. Sponsored initiatives and events. Temasek hosts and sponsors a wide array of initiatives and events to share perspectives and experiences with partners from around the world, including the International Monetary Fund, the International Forum of Sovereign Wealth Funds, the World Bank Group, the European Union, and other multilateral institutions, as well as national institutions such as China Euro unregistered trademark S State-Owned Asset Supervision and Administration Commission, Korea's Investment Corporation, Kazakhstan Euro unregistered trademark S Samruk Kazana, Australia Euro unregistered trademark S Future Fund, and Norway Euro unregistered trademark S Norges Bank. Other regular one-off events include Singapore Global Dialogue, the Singapore Summit, Temasek International Panel, Asia Banking CEO Roundtable, Ecosperity 2014, Jubilee at the Botanics 2015, learning events, business forums. Over the last decade, Temasek has also seeded a number of purpose-built institutions to help develop and strengthen capabilities in the financial and corporate sectors in Singapore and the rest of Asia. Wealth Management Institute, established in 2003, the Wealth Management Institute is a leading provider of wealth management training and education in the region, developing talent for the region Euro unregistered trademark S fast-growing wealth management sector. WMIA Euro unregistered trademark S main programs are, WMICACS Training, WMI Certificate in Private Banking, WMI Advanced Wealth Management Program, Master of Science in Wealth Management, WMI Certificate in Trust Services, WMI Advanced Certificate in Trust Services, continuing professional development courses and talks. Since its establishment, more than 5,500 professionals from around Asia have completed WMIA Euro unregistered trademark S programs. Sim Kee Boon Institute for Financial Economics, established in 2008, the Sim Kee Boon Institute for Financial Economics at the Singapore Management University focuses on education and research to build capacity in the financial sector. Stewardship and Corporate Governance Center, launched in 2011, the SCG Center aims to foster thought leadership and help companies develop succeeding generations of corporate directors through signature programs and regular forums. Controversy Shin Corporation Temasek is fully owned by Singapore's Ministry of Finance, and these close links to the government have on several occasions caused protests in foreign countries. Temasek's 2006 acquisition of Shin Corporation, owned by the family of then-Thai Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra, was particularly controversial, with protesters burning effigies of Lee and Ho on the streets of Bangkok. The deal was a factor in exacerbating the Thai political crisis, which eventually led to the downfall of Thaksin and a review of the transaction's legality. The military junta that overthrew Thaksin, later tried unsuccessfully to force Temasek to divest a large part of its investment in Shin Corporation. As of 2015, Temasek's stake in InTouch Corporation had reduced to 42%. Fortune magazine described the investment in Shin Corporation as Euro or a spectacular misjudgment Euro. Nepotism In 2012, Singaporean blogger Emeritus alleged that the appointment of Ho Ching, Singapore Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong's wife, as CEO of Temasek Holdings was a case of cronyism and nepotism, which was subsequently deleted and for which they apologized. See also, Government of Singapore Investment Corporation. References. External links, official website, Temasek Review.